Great. So, thank you for having me and for your interest in Tunisia, where tensions are running high as President Hayed is moving forward with his constitutional reform plan, which will culminate in the December 17th parliamentary elections, and as the country is literally crumbling under the stress of a reeling economy. So, my remarks will focus on the current situation and how we got to this point of the crisis. Well, a good understanding of the situation today requires a brief reminder of the background. Tunisians elected an outsider, they elected an anti establishment candidate, and less than 2 years after his election, they showed great support for his move to take all powers in his hands. They did that because they grew tired of a decade of a near permanent political crisis, which uncovered an incompetent political elite and which completely eroded people's trust in the system. So it's the system created by a tailor-made constitution that generated a sclerotic political system, and by a made-to-order electoral law that brought about with every election a more fractured parliament that reflected a growing polarization within the country and led to a growing dissatisfaction with political actors. And in this context, it should be reminded that the 2014 Constitution was praised by our friends in Europe and the US as a great success, despite the fact that it was deeply flawed. It created a hybrid system which proved to be a failure and greatly undermined democracy as a governing system. Also, during this period, successive transition governments with the Islamist Party and Nahda taking the lead failed to address the deep social and economic issues that brought about the 2010-2011 uprisings, and instead, these governments presided over the systematic dismantling of the foundations of the state and the blatant ransacking of the treasury, oblivious of the growing frustration of rank and file Tunisia. So, with this backdrop in mind, it is not surprising that Tunisians largely applauded Said's actions on July 25th, 2021. Their support was clearly a manifestation of public discontent. They saw him as someone who was taking action to address their problems, as someone who dared to put an end to the disastrous decade-long rule of political Islam. So his actions, despite being in a way unconstitutional, bolstered the perception that he is a Kurd. But more than a year after the takeover, he failed to address any of the social or economic problems that Tunisians have faced today. Instead, he came up with a new constitution, apparently conceived and drafted by the president himself, a constitution devoid of checks and balances that put in place an imperial presidency that left parliament without any meaningful power and reduced the judicial branch to a mere function. And what is particularly problematic for me about this constitution is that it paves the way potentially for the presidency for life, as it allows the president's terms in office to be extended in case of imminent danger to the state. And this is an elastic clause that can be pulled to the extremes. And like the Constitution, Said's electoral law was not subject to public debate and was also problematic on a number of counts. I just mentioned a few ones. I know that my Tunisian colleague will talk about the law. So just a few remarks about the electoral law. It is clear that this law aims to undermine political parties, as voters will select individual candidates rather than party lists, and parties would not be allowed to campaign for candidates nor be responsible for financing their candidate's campaign. And this will open the door wide for corruption. Also, women chances to be candidates will be um, greatly hurt due to the endorsement system. Each candidate needs 400 endorsements. And once elected, MPs will be under the constraints of being removed by their electors and as early as 1 year after the election. And this offers yet another chance for corruption and puts great pressure on elected officials to do their job in good conscience. So the new electoral law will bring about yet another more fractured parliament, potentially stained with corruption and devoid of any meaningful power. In the meantime, the economy, which has been in a disastrous shape, is relegated once again to a secondary position. So far, Said has done little to improve the financial situation, apart from his diatribes about unnamed ransackers and his promises to create with stolen money his national companies where everyone will get a job and will have a decent life. In such a situation, even if Tunisia reaches an agreement with the IMF, on which it is working really hard. And the good news is that the IMF managing director 2 days ago said that the IMF will reach an agreement with Tunisia very soon. Even so, this would only be a temporary fix. It will only provide a short-term solution to the financial problems and allow authorities to buy more time. Um, what the country needs really in this difficult situation is to tackle deeply rooted economic problems away from populist measures and populist promises. They need to reduce the huge inequalities between regions. They need to do away with the rentier supported system. They need to get back local and foreign investors because they have been deterred because of political uncertainty. So unless President Hayed changes course significantly, continued economic hardship will likely cause more and more Tunisians to turn against us. And here in this context, I would like to seize the occasion to make an important point. Some are betting on the financial collapse of Tunisia in the coming months, and some are calling for the IMF loan to be withheld and for using EU and US financial assistance to put pressure on the government and strong arm Sayed into sharing power. I believe this is not the right position to take. True donors have considerable leverage, but they should be careful how to use it. Not using it the right way might impose greater hardship on the Tunisian people and is likely to hurt even further the prospect of economic recovery and social stability. Tunisia's partners, I believe, should help the country deal with its immediate needs by supporting an IMF agreement. They should continue to provide economic assistance to Tunisia to cope with shortages of food and fuel as well as increases in their prices, while asking for accountability, while voicing their disagreement as to the political process and the known democratic standards. It should not be forgotten that Tunisians elected Fayyad. Tunisians supported his paragraph, and Tunisians voted yes for the constitution because there were reasons, and it is these reasons that should be understood and addressed. So, uh, playing the economic hardship card is to say um, the least inappropriate, and counting on people in the streets to topple Sayed is a dangerous force and may get out of control in a way that can turn ugly. Also, there is no guarantee whatsoever that the opposition would control a breakdown public order and restore democracy. So at the end of these remarks, um, here is my take. How did we get here? It is the transitional process that was marked by political polarization. It is political Islam on which many placed a bet to be the alternative that proved unattractive. It is the adoption of a consensus based political model that proved a failure and prevented political actors from seeing the simmering frustration that President Said capitalized on during elections in 2019. It is also putting political reform ahead of economic reform, which was a mistake. Where to? Where are we heading? The most plausible scenarios are not promising, to say the least. The spillover effect of the democratic backsliding is being felt through trials of civilians in military courts, travel bans being issued carelessly, same for arrest warrants, and this is creating an atmosphere of fear of return or authoritarian. Opposition political parties um, are weakened, and of course, here they take some of the responsibility, and the economic and financial problems seem to be entrenched, and it is and divisive inflammatory discourse and the divide and rule approach thrive on these woes. The way out, I think that the first thing that needs to be done is to return to democratic institutions. Also, to give the economy priority over constitutional issues, to initiate reform at all levels and to adopt an inclusive process of reform and do away with the opaque and formal decision-making process. And finally, Tunisia cannot get out of this quagmire without mobilizing support for the international community, without Tunisia's friends to stand uh, uh, decided to be able to leave the situation and take a much better course. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. Prego, please.
Okay.
Okay.
So I have a word on the referendum. I really do not agree that the referendum was not a good opportunity because for me, the referendum was not on the content of the Constitution because the content of the Constitution was not subject to public debate. People did not know much about the content. But the referendum, I believe it was meant as a vote on the person of the president. And it clearly shows that President Sayed, according to this referendum, is still not there. I mean, 2.66 million Tunisians voted yes in the referendum. This number is highly significant because the president himself was voted in by around 2.8 million in the runoff election in 2019. So he managed, despite everything, he managed to keep his base in place in terms of number. This base is clearly attracted by his populist divisive discourse, and it is a base that still believes that a strong man should be in power and authoritarian solutions should be taken in order to turn the tide, especially in the economy. So the referendum should be read not as I said, a vote on the Constitution, but as a vote on the president. The second point that I like to make is about the boycotting of the election. So yes, true, many parties declared that they will boycott the legislative elections. And this is what Sayed exactly wants. This law was made to undermine political parties. He does not want political parties to be part of it. So that's exactly what he wants. And because the elections are based on the individuals, you will find more than enough people ready to um, be candidate for the summit with this.
Thank you.